I'm one of the 4,000 people that have married into the family now. According to that's a family tree there. All right, I've been doing some. I like doing research. I like doing family history research, and I've been spending quite a bit of time researching the Borders family. I'm now just through Chauncey Borders, Pat. I've now got the names and birth city of 225 of your grandparents.
Wow.
That doesn't even count through the Rosencrantz side. I haven't even touched that one yet. So as it turns out, you guys have been prolific breeders for all of time. You got a lot of grandparents there. But anyway, we'll go through some of these pictures. Some of these, I shared a little bit of some of this last year, but it's kind of roundabout. You may not realize all of the Borders family has been a part of and has done over the centuries. But basically, I guess as I've been researching, here's what I can say. If anything important has ever happened in our country, there's probably been one of you guys there. You have been around for all of it. All of it. Here, and actually, this was you show this picture at, okay, well, this is Chauncey by Borders. All right, this fella right here, some of you guys maybe remember this picture from last year. This is the greatest neck beard in the history of the world. Going on, it's the business on the face, party on the neck thing going on here. This is your grandfather. His name is Basil Harrison, so some of you guys know that Harrison name. This is your grandfather. This was a pretty key cog in kind of getting your family history, because this man was the descendant of his uncle, was one of the men who signed the Declaration of Independence. He also had uncles that were two presidents. I think that's the next slide. Yeah, here we go. If you see these right here, you can't see. That's William Henry Harrison. He was the president of the United States. That's an uncle of yours. Benjamin Harrison, president of the United States, another uncle of yours. This third picture here, which you can't see very well, if you trace your family back to England, which you guys have a lot of roots in England. Probably more, or not probably, more in England than any of the other countries I ran across. Tons of British heritage. There was, back in the 1600s, there was a king, his name was Charles I. He was assassinated, and he was assassinated at the order of your uncle. There was a coup, they arrested the king, and your uncle, Thomas Harrison, was the guy who signed the death warrant for the King of England, and the King of England was killed. The only trouble was that the people who were loyal to the king eventually got the power back, and so they grabbed your uncle, keep that aside, they grabbed your uncle and they had him hung, drawn, and quartered. So if you ever go to London, there's actually a pub in England dedicated to your uncle, Thomas Harrison. It's called Hung, Drawn, and Quartered. So, you find yourself in London, go drink a pint of beer in your uncle's memory. There. All right. Most of the research that I'm going to be sharing with you here today has actually not come through the men, but through the women. We're going to be looking at a lot of the ancestry of your grandmothers here. Three main women that I've been focused on: Addie Harrison Clark, Mildred Clark Borders, and Lydia Stilt Borders. Just about everybody I'm going to be talking about here today has come. It's through these ladies, tracing it back here. So you're going to see some names that aren't. It's not Borders, but they're your grandparents. There's 85 different last names that I have that were your grandparents. You got a Grandpa McCoy, a Grandpa Avery, a Grandma Carter, a Grandpa, and there's all these different families there. So this is what we're doing here. All right, go to the next slide here. Okay, we're going to take you back to the Civil War. I'm going to show you all these different things that happened in American history your family was a part of. You had a grandfather. Now this was a Borders, Benjamin Franklin Borders. He lived in Ohio at the time, and the Civil War was going on, and they were reaching the end of the war, and they needed people to volunteer. So they went to Ohio, and they said, hey, we need some of you guys to volunteer for just 100 days. Just give us 100 days. You don't have to go to war or anything. We just need you to protect. His job was going to be to protect Washington, D.C. So he volunteered, 100 days. I can go stand with a gun in front of Washington, D.C. and do that. The only trouble was that they didn't realize the Confederates were going to push through. And the Confederates broke through the line, and now your grandfather, who wasn't supposed to be in battle, found himself in 4 separate battles. One of them, I don't know how well you can see this, you kind of almost have to see it up close here. One of them was the siege of Petersburg, where the Confederate lines were so strong, they just couldn't break through them, so they had the idea of digging a tunnel underneath them. So they dug a tunnel, I think it was 600 feet, something like that. They dug a tunnel 600 feet underneath the Confederate lines, and then once they got there, they blew it up. They killed, I think they said 300 Confederate soldiers instantly when they blew it up. That was, your grandfather was a part of that. I don't know what his role was there, but he might have been one of the guys down in the tunnel. That sounds like something you'd see borders doing, right? You build a wall underneath, underground there anyway. So he was involved in that. If you go to Petersburg, Virginia, there, the crater's still there. And give you an idea, see, this is a man right here. You can make that out. They left a pretty big crater there. So, all right, next slide. Okay, now we get back to the Revolutionary War. You guys have so many ancestors that fought in the Revolutionary War. Most families, you might have one. You guys have dozens of them. Dozens of them were there when America first became America here. This is a painting of one battle. You have two grandfathers present at this battle. One of them fighting for the Americans, the other one was fighting for the British. You had a grandfather on both sides. They were shooting at each other. The American grandfather, his name was James Woods. He was shot in the battle. He survived. He survived the battle, but he got wounded in the battle. I've kind of wondered, is it a chance that actually, so his granddaughter married the British guy's grandson. And so I'm kind of wondering, did the grandfathers shoot each other there? They were shooting at each other. Anyway, that's the case there. So, and actually, you go to the next slide. Your other grandfather, who was fighting on the British side, he wasn't British. He was German. One of your grandfathers grew up in Germany, and when Britain went to war with us here in America, they went to the Germans and said we could use some help. And so some German soldiers are called Hessians, and this is a painting depicted down. You see them from the giant gold pointy hats. One of your grandfathers, a German Hessian, came to America, fought against the Americans. They lost, but when the war was over, they were given the option of staying in America, and he said, yeah, what the heck, why not? And so he wound up staying. So you also got some German roots there as well. Now, go to the next slide. So this battle that your Grandpa Woods and his German grandfather fought, it was, the British actually won that battle, but they won that battle. It was so costly to them that the main British general, his name is Oliver Cornwallis, he decided to surrender. It was just an idea that if we keep winning battles like this, we will never win the war. The British lost so many troops that day. It was so brutal. So your grandfather fought the final battle and possibly was there. I don't know if you've ever seen this painting before or not. This is a pretty famous painting in American history. If you go to the United States Capitol building, the United States Capitol building where Congress meets, in the Grand Rotunda, this painting is a massive mural that's there in the rotunda. It's one of, I think, 4 paintings in there. It's of General Cornwallis, who's walking, surrendering to General Washington, who's on the horse. Your grandfather was there that day. He would have been there the day that the American Revolution came to an end. And oh, by the way, that grandfather, you know what his birthday was? 4th of July. Oh. So he was born on the 4th of July before there was a 4th of July. That's how American you guys are. All right, trace you guys back just a little bit further. Or no, actually not quite that far. I got this a little bit out of order. I don't know if you recognize this guy or not. You certainly recognize the product there. This is Milton Hershey. I can't confirm this one. All right, I can't confirm that you're related to him, but here's what I know. You have a grandmother and a grandfather who immigrated here from Switzerland. Their last name was Hershey. They were of German and Swiss heritage. They come to Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. About 75 years later, Milton Hershey is born in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and he's of German and Swiss descent. Same county, same heritage, same last name. Can't confirm it. I couldn't find a connection. I couldn't find out who his grandmother was. Otherwise, I could tell you. But there's a good chance that you guys are related to the Hershey Chocolate Company and family. So, and I don't think there's any stock options available for you guys. They should at least send you a box of chocolate. Right? Yeah, you don't have any claim on the Hershey millions, though. Yes. All right. Now, here's where things keep going back. I have the name of one of your grandfathers that was born in France in the year 1125. And we can trace his son and his daughter and his son and all the way down to you guys. We can go back 900 years and have every generation accounted for here. It was a fellow by the name of Philippe Lecartier. He winds up moving to England, and he has some kids there. They changed the last name from Lecartier, which was very French. They wanted to sound British, so they changed their last name to Carter. the Carter family, I don't know why, but for some reason, the King of England, the story of my wife, she's like, see, Jeff, you just thought I've been bossy all of these years. She says, as it turns out, I was born to be in charge. So, anyway, this is their manor, which is no longer a home anymore. It's now a school. But the Carter family lived here. Okay, so now this is where your grandfathers made things hard for each other again. Okay, you go back to that uncle that led the assassination, killed the King of England. At that time, living in Garston Manor was a man named John Carter, who was your grandfather. He was fiercely loyal to the King of England, and when the king was murdered, he was terrified that your uncle, Thomas Harrison, was going to come murder him. So he gathered together as much stuff as he could. Of course, he's incredibly wealthy, but he couldn't bring it all with him. He gathered what he could, hopped on a ship, sailed across, and landed in Virginia in the 1600s. While he was here, he was a pretty good businessman. And he wound up accumulating, started to get some acreage. He had at one point around 10,000 acres of tobacco farm in Virginia. He was making pretty decent money, doing all right. And then he had a son. You can go to this next one here. This sexy beast right here. Oh no, back one. This sexy beast, that's your grandfather, Robert Carter. They called this man King Carter because he was so good at making money. By the time he died, he had a plantation with 300,000 acres of tobacco farm. And he is regarded, this is a cool story for Borders here now, he is regarded as the first millionaire in America. Wow. You guys had the very first millionaire in America as your grandpa.
I mean, I asked you.
At which point, when I was sharing this with my wife, she's like, then who's the slouch that lost it all for us? So I'm assuming you guys don't have 300,000 of farmland in Virginia. There. He made so much money. He became the governor of Virginia as well. All right, now here's where things get kind of cool too for him. So you want to see you guys' connection to who you guys are related to? You want to know one of his other grandsons? Go to the next picture. You recognize this guy? Robert E. Lee. General Robert E. Lee of the Confederacy. He's your cousin.
Wow.
All right, it's one of your cousins. Another grandson of his. Go to the next picture. Recognize him?
No way.
Jimmy Carter. There's the Carter name. Jimmy Carter was a cousin of your family. All right, go to the next picture. Here's another one of his grandsons. Now this handsome man, his name was Carter Braxton. He was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. So if you guys are tracking with this, you have 3 presidents that you're related to, and 2 of the people that signed the Declaration of Independence are from your family, which I think is the next picture. Benjamin Harrison, again the Harrison family name, he signed the Declaration of Independence as well. You guys were there the day that America was born. And not just like some distant relation, your grandpa. It was your grandpa that was there. All right, go to the next slide. All right, but this isn't when you guys came to America. You guys didn't come to America in the 1700s. You guys came to America when America was starting. There's a book out there that tells the story of the Connecticut Colony. In that story, when they list out the names of the families that came and started the state of Connecticut, it's your grandparents. Not just 1 or 2 of them, dozens of them. Came, you guys, I don't know if you've ever been to Connecticut or not, you might not know, you guys started that. That was your grandparents that started that and came over there. They started Connecticut Colony. Here's the other one, but it wasn't just a Connecticut Colony. Your family was Puritans, which means they were deeply religious Calvinists, if that means anything to you. And in England, they weren't treated real favorably. They came under religious persecution. And so there's a city in England, Rowley, England, that their preacher was getting under some heavy heat from the government to change his ways, and he said, I'm done with this. And he said, I'm going to America. And then he looked at his church and said, y'all should come with me. And he took 20 families with him to America as Massachusetts was being started. Your grandpa brought his family. Your grandpa was one of the original 20 families to come over to help start that colony. And you can go to the next slide. And you go to this church in Rowley, England, there's a stained glass window dedicated to the memory of those families that went to America back in the 1600s to start Massachusetts, the big colony. So who knows, maybe that guy right there is supposed to be your grandpa. He was the model for it. You're also handsome. I can imagine you would-be models for stained glass windows. All right, go ahead, next one. All right, this is the last slide. I think this is the last slide. In addition to being in Massachusetts, I thought this was interesting. Have you guys ever heard of the Salem witch trials? You guys heard of those or not? I don't know if you heard of those. Back in the 1600s, they started rounding up girls, accusing them of being witches, and then the girls had to prove that they weren't witches. Like, have you ever seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail? You know, like see if she floats, that kind of stuff. If she floats, she's a witch. Like those kinds of things. They rounded, I think it was like 20 different girls. Your family lived there. I can't prove that any of them were part of the trials. And I looked at the last names, none of the last names of people you're related to, but they were from Raleigh, Massachusetts, which your family started. They were from Salem, Massachusetts, which you had a lot of grandparents from Salem, Massachusetts. And some of your grandparents got married in the city 20 years before this happened, so they had to know these women. They had to know these girls that were being crushed to death and drowned and all these different things because they thought they were witches. Anyway, your family was a part of that there. Is there any more slides? No. Anyway, so I guess the thing is I don't know if you guys, with my family came to America like 100 years ago, and then that's pretty well, like we just came here and we went to work. That's the end of the story. Like there's nothing interesting about my family. You guys, like as I was scrolling through, clicking on it, it's just like, oh, they were there for the Civil War. Oh, okay, Revolutionary War. Oh, the Declaration of Independence too. Oh, the colonies. Okay, like it's just like, and it just got to the point where every time I click, it's like, of course they were there. Nothing's happening in America. Your family wasn't there. They were there. So anyway, so there you have it. A little bit of research on the Borders family history there. So
thank you very much.